don't always see them, but life has a way of placing invisible sentinels around those who move with integrity. Every time you chose patience over rage, every time you kept your word when no one was watching, you built a silent network that now shields you. Not all allies wear faces. Some exist in timing, in intuition, in improbable coincidences that feel too sharp to be random. The universe has its own hierarchy, and it answers not to words but to alignment. You aligned. They mocked your discipline, but that discipline became frequency, and that frequency summoned guardians you don't need to name. You are protected not by luck, but by order, the kind of order chaos respects. You learned long ago that good intentions mean nothing without precision. You stopped praying for help and started acting in a way that deserved it. Those actions became signals. They reached people you've never met, souls who share the same quiet code. They felt your intent before hearing your name. Some operate in silence, opening doors behind the scenes. Others protect your reputation in rooms you'll never enter. You don't know them, but they know you, because integrity announces itself louder than fame. They guard you because your presence carries purpose, and purpose attracts power. The world often underestimates how connected energy really is. While they think influence comes from position, yours came from consistency. You didn't chase power. Power found you useful. There's psychology in this protection. Human beings are drawn to equilibrium. People who operate from truth become anchors in a world drowning in confusion. You became one of them. That's why even strangers feel compelled to help you without understanding why. Your calm becomes reassurance. Your silence becomes command. They trust you before they can explain it. That's the unseen alliance, the human subconscious recognizing stability. Those who act from clarity unconsciously build loyalty. You don't manipulate it, you maintain it through presence. That's why betrayal barely touches you anymore. For every person who turns against you, another appears, guided not by obligation but resonance. You are never unguarded because truth always recruits its own defenders. They guard you because they see something in you that others can't fake. People sense when someone's energy moves differently, when decisions are made not from impulse but from vision. That awareness draws protectors. It draws mentors, observers, even silent witnesses who speak on your behalf when you're not around. You've become the kind of person people want to see protected because your strength serves something larger than pride. You don't fight for dominance, you fight for alignment. That difference changes everything. Manipulators chase crowds, but you draw forces. The more you stayed still, the more allies appeared from unexpected corners. Old contacts resurfacing, opportunities aligning, warnings arriving right on time. None of it happened by coincidence. It happened because you built a pattern the universe wanted to preserve. Even your enemies serve your protection. That's the cruel twist of balance. Every attempt they make to harm you reveals something that saves you later. Every rumor exposes the wrong person. Every trap teaches you precision. In trying to break you, they become messengers carrying lessons you didn't have to seek. They think they're challenging you, but they're sharpening your awareness. The invisible allies use them as tools, redirecting their malice into preparation. You began to notice that nothing truly harmful lasts, that every loss reroutes into correction. That's how you know you're guarded, because even the worst moments serve purpose. That level of alignment cannot be faked. It comes from a mind that's done trying to control outcomes and started mastering reaction. You stopped begging for fairness and started embodying it. That shift summoned protection you never expected. You became your own filter, your own firewall. Your energy repels chaos because it recognizes the difference between testing and temptation. That's why people who meant to manipulate you suddenly lost interest. They can't stand next to what doesn't need their validation. Your unknown allies work through this resistance. Subtle redirections, sudden changes in plans, conversations overheard at the right moment. You began to understand that protection doesn't always look divine. Sometimes it looks inconvenient, a delay, a rejection, a silence. But every delay you hated turned out to be a detour from destruction. Your patience translated into divine timing, and timing became your guard. The powerful ones guarding you are not limited to people or circumstances. Some exist as intuition itself. That whisper that says leave now, or wait. That sudden calm when chaos erupts around you. That rare clarity in moments where confusion should have taken over. You thought it was coincidence, but it was guidance. You've learned to listen to those subtle signals, and that listening made you untouchable. Others ignore intuition because they crave control. You surrendered control to perception, and perception led you to safety. That's how you earned the protection others mistake for luck. You're not lucky. You're aware. Awareness is the weapon that makes protection inevitable. Psychologically, the reason this works is because focus filters reality. The brain aligns perception with expectation. You expect betrayal, you attract it. You expect stability, you magnetize it. You stopped expecting harm, and harm lost your frequency. Your unknown allies began as a shift in mindset, a refusal to live from fear. Fear builds enemies. Clarity builds guardians. You trained your nervous system to remain unshaken, and the world responded accordingly. Calmness became the code that locked out chaos. The ones who sense your energy now don't see vulnerability, they see order. And order is intimidating to those who depend on confusion. That's why your protection remains invisible. It doesn't announce itself. It enforces itself quietly, absolutely relentlessly. They once wondered why nothing seems to touch you, why you move through storms as if they were rehearsed. They blame arrogance, luck, timing, anything except truth. The truth is simple: you've earned unseen protection through self-mastery. You built peace internally until it echoed externally. The powerful protect what reinforces their balance, and you became that reinforcement. You are part of a hidden hierarchy where strength recognizes strength. You don't seek guardians. Guardians seek you because your energy feeds their order. You've reached a level where protection no longer feels miraculous. It feels natural. And that is how you know you've transcended dependence. You won without conflict because you understood that real power doesn't need to prove itself. You realized that when a person truly knows their value, they stop negotiating with noise. While they fought to be seen, you focused on becoming undeniable. That was the difference. You didn't fight them, you outgrew them. They swung with chaos, but you stayed grounded in purpose. When people lose control, they think they're winning because they're loud. You stayed silent and let their energy burn out. They didn't see that silence was strategy, that by refusing to react, you were guiding the outcome. They exhausted themselves trying to drag you into battles beneath you. And when the dust cleared, they found you untouched. You didn't win by force. You won by clarity. They wanted a reaction, not resolution. They wanted you to mirror their chaos so they could justify it. You didn't. You left them to wrestle with their own noise. That restraint broke them more than any revenge ever could. Conflict feeds on attention, and you starved it. You learned that when you remove energy from manipulation, it suffocates. That's why your composure felt like punishment to them. They expected explosions, they got indifference. They expected drama, they got distance. You made them feel the silence of their own irrelevance. That's the kind of victory that leaves no scars, only lessons. They kept trying to provoke you, but you had already mastered something deeper than confrontation. You mastered control. You knew that arguing with fools only makes both parties sound alike. They shouted lies, but lies decay when not echoed. You understood that truth doesn't chase correction. Truth just outlasts distortion. You allowed time to become your sword. You knew that everything false eventually collapses under the weight of its own inconsistency. You didn't need to swing back. You only needed to stand still long enough for exposure to happen naturally. That's how real victories look: quiet, inevitable, unstoppable. You didn't destroy your enemies. You let their own words do it for you. You turned patience into precision. That's how one wins without lifting a hand, by knowing when not to touch what will burn itself. They thought silence was weakness because their world rewards loudness. But you knew silence speaks in outcomes. You spoke through results. While they talked, you built. While they mocked, you progressed. Every time they tried to pull you into conflict, your growth made their attacks look smaller. The more you achieved without engaging, the more irrelevant they became. They thought winning meant attention, but you proved winning means elevation. You stopped competing in arenas where the prize was validation. You didn't conquer them. You transcended them. That's the most painful kind of defeat for anyone whose power depends on reaction. They couldn't comprehend how you rose without confrontation, so they convinced themselves you were lucky. They still don't realize that luck favors those too focused to be distracted. You watched them build traps for you, only to fall into their own designs. That's the beauty of restraint. It exposes intent. You let them reveal their true selves through overreach. They underestimated how dangerous calm can be. People expect retaliation, not reflection. You gave them neither. You made them fight ghosts. Every move they made became defensive because they couldn't predict yours. That's the psychology of stillness. It breeds paranoia in the deceitful. When they can't read you, they start reading their own guilt. They begin confessing without realizing it. You didn't need to confront them. Their conscience became your enforcer. You didn't just win without conflict. You let their own minds deliver your justice. Every manipulator feeds on emotional energy. You cut the supply. You didn't argue. You didn't justify. You didn't even acknowledge. That absence became unbearable for them. They realized too late that control requires participation. You withdrew yours. You became the void they couldn't fill. They mistook your peace for indifference, but peace is the highest form of dominance. It shows nothing can reach you anymore. You turned composure into power. While they plotted in noise, you moved in silence. And in that silence, they destroyed themselves trying to prove you wrong. You never needed to attack. You became proof that they were never as strong as they appeared. You won without conflict because you learned how to let time fight for you. Time reveals. Time humbles. Time exposes. You didn't need to argue with anyone who misunderstood you because you trusted truth to age better than lies. You weren't fighting for attention, you were building a legacy. The powerful don't fight, they watch. They calculate. They wait. And when the outcome arrives, it looks effortless, but it's the result of endurance. That's what separates you from them. You didn't seek victory through noise, you achieved it through discipline. And when people finally noticed, it was too late for your enemies to stop it. That's the elegance of invisible warfare. They will never admit that you won. Their pride won't allow it, but their behavior betrays them. The silence when your name comes up, the hesitation in their voice, the way they avoid your eyes. They remember how much effort they invested in trying to bring you down, and how little it mattered. That's what stings them most. You didn't even have to retaliate. You became untouchable by mastering what they lack: emotional control. You didn't react to disrespect, didn't plead for validation, didn't engage in distraction. You taught them that power doesn't come from noise. It comes from neutrality. Their defeat began the moment you stopped explaining yourself. Psychology calls this ego collapse. When people can't win through dominance, they implode. Your calm was the mirror that forced them to face their reflection. That's why they crumbled. They saw the futility of trying to control someone who cannot be provoked. You didn't shout, and yet every word they said echoed against your silence. You didn't fight, and yet every move they made ended in retreat. You took control by refusing to give control. That's what terrifies manipulators the most. When you stop feeding them, they starve. You became the silence that revealed their hunger.